Afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. Sorry we're a couple of minutes late. Little technical error. Welcome to Place on Place Scrutiny Committee, 29th of January 2026. Today we have some guests with us. We have Tracy and Rachel, yes? All for the cultural strategy, and later on we have Colette and I've forgotten Kate. There we go. Do apologise. So, of course, we've got our committee. So, without further ado, we'll get into the agenda. Firstly, apologies for absence. I don't believe we have any.
We have Jackie Strong, but she's being substituted today by Peter Strong.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I forgot. I do apologise. Yes, welcome, Peter. I don't know if we've got anybody else's an apology, but we will find out, I'm sure, in time, if they're not here. Okay, 2, declarations of interest. Anybody? No? As and when? Lovely, thank you. All right, 3, place scrutiny forward work plan action list. Now, I went through this morning, actually. It was quite interesting to read. So I will hand over to Robert to raise the place scrutiny action list up for everybody to have a look.
Yeah, well, I mean, does anyone have any opening comments? We've got the flood strategy to come at some point, hopefully soon. Just waiting on a confirmed date for that, but it had to be deferred because of all of the flooding in Monmouth before Christmas, in particular. We should have a date for that any time now. And then we've got the animal welfare item, therefore, at our next meeting for definite locked in. And then after that, it's just a case of which of the longer term items are to come forward, and we're just awaiting dates on those. So that's about all.
Do you want to show the actual? Can we share the screen for everybody, please?
Yeah. There we go. So that's our current meeting. The next one's animal welfare with flood strategy, as you can see, hopefully to land in the next 1 or 2 meetings. And then, then as we discussed as well, because Councillor Brown in particular had raised SUDS as well as an item, and we were going to do that at whichever item the flood strategy comes to, we were going to do SUDS then at the following meeting. So that will fall on from the flood strategy.
Yes, I was looking at the action list. Is that the one that you're looking at the moment?
No, this was the work programme.
As opposed to so when do we... Because action list was next on the agenda, so...
It says forward work plan and action list, so I suppose they combined in effect.
All right, because on the action list, on minute item 7, I did get a response from Nick Kesey, but it wasn't. I didn't respond to it, but it wasn't very satisfactory because it was just providing reasons why it couldn't be done, and I don't see why we can't be given a list of council assets and the disposal of them, because in the budget in, I think, February 2023, there was a list of council assets, and, I think we should be allowed to scrutinise those, even if it is in closed session.
Could I clarify, Councillor Brown? So the last I knew was that he'd contacted you for a bit of...
He sent me an email, but basically it was, asking... it didn't seem... I can't remember what it actually said, but it didn't seem very satisfactory to me. It seemed excuses why, or asking for further information why I wanted this, and... it didn't seem to me to be answering a simple question of a request that had been made.
Okay. Yeah, so I was under the impression it was he had...
I did get a response.
Yeah, that he'd sent it just to ask for some further information.
One. Yeah.
Okay.
If I suggest that perhaps we make that request through me and through Hazel and Rob as a committee, and then ask for the actual list of properties and assets, Is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, because I think there was a list of about 20 in these budget papers, and it went through all of them, and it said sort of things like what the value was, and how it was leased, and so forth. And we just don't have that particular information, and I think it would be useful if we did have a look at it. And
Okay, so I'll ask Hazel and Rob if they can represent and ask for the committee, and then we'll share it from that point. Is that all right?
I mean, I can actually send you the link
If you do that, and then
of
we'll do a
what
piece
public
of work
information
afterwards.
was available. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that piece of work afterwards. Right, so moving on. Anybody else got any thoughts? There will be other things that will be jumping in on this action plan and forward work plan as it goes forward, but that's how it looks currently, okay? All right, is everybody happy? Anybody on the screen not happy? No, all happy, lovely. Okay, and then we go to the forward work planner, will council and cabinet work planner, which is slightly different. That's what other people are doing, not us. So if we can have a look at that and see if any of our work crosses over. Okay, now we can see all of that as we go down through the list slowly, I say, because I struggle to catch it. Is there anybody got any questions they wish to have raised back forward to them from us?
7 pages.
Yeah.
So the most recent dates obviously are at the top. So scrolling down much further, you get into earlier dates. So obviously today we've got these ones down here anyway.
Okay, right. Are we all happy? Any thoughts? If we could send a link. Yeah, if we could send. Oh no, it's easy said and hard to do sometimes. If we could send a link to all our members, and then they can have a squint through in their own time and raise any issues. Come back to us. Wonderful, thank you. Right, moving on to item 5, to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. Anybody got any questions or issues? I'm looking all around. None? Wonderful. Do we need to vote on that? So, okay, lovely, thank you. 6, public open forum. And I'm really sorry to tell you, it doesn't look like we've got anybody, which is really disappointing. So come on, guys, we can do better than that next time round. Get some public here. Right, item 7, cultural strategy to conduct a pre-decision scrutiny ahead of decision of cabinet. Tracy Torres to deliver presentation and to introduce the report. There we go, guys. So over to you, if you don't mind. Hi, Tracy. Hi.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just share my screen now, so we have got a presentation to share with you. There we go. Okay. So, as I said, thank you, Chair, for having us along today. Myself and Rachel are going to take you through a short presentation on the cultural strategy, talking about the journey, collaboration and engagement, and strategic alignment with other policies and plans in the Council. The slides will contain that we will share with you today is the need for a cultural strategy in Monmouthshire, its alignment with other plans and strategies within the Council, the journey we have taken to get us to the position of presenting the draft strategy to yourselves today, how engagement was achieved, and future plans to sustain and involve the cultural vision. So Monmouthshire, with its rich history, diverse communities and stunning landscapes, stands as a unique county within Wales. Developing a cultural strategy is essential for harnessing the full potential of its heritage, creativity and social capital. Highlighted in the Community and Corporate Plan as an outcome, the strategy will support us in working towards a greener, fairer Monmouthshire, where everyone can enjoy their chosen activities in our thriving towns and beautiful landscapes. Under economic, a cultural strategy helps to position Monmouthshire as an attractive destination for tourists, investors and creative professionals. By promoting local festivals, heritage sites and the arts, the county can boost visitor numbers and support local businesses. The creative industries are a growing sector, and a strategy can help nurture talent, generate employment and stimulate innovation across the region. Culture is a fundamental to its community identity. The strategy will enable Monmouthshire to celebrate its unique traditions, languages and stories, fostering pride and belonging amongst residents. It can also encourage participation in cultural activities, bringing together people of different backgrounds and ages, and building stronger, more cohesive communities. Engagement within the arts and heritage and creative activities is proven to improve well-being, mental health and overall quality of life. A cultural strategy ensures that opportunities for participation are accessible to all, making Monmouthshire a vibrant and fulfilling place to live. This includes supporting local artists, providing spaces for creative expression, and integrating culture into education and public services. The strategy provides a framework for decision-making, helping the local authority, funders and partners to align their efforts and resources. It could assist with attracting external funding by demonstrating a clear vision and commitment to culture, whilst also encouraging partnerships working across sectors such as education, tourism and health and placemaking. In a rapidly changing world, the culture strategy will enable Monmouthshire to respond proactively to new opportunities and challenges, whether embracing digital technology, adapting to demographic shifts, or addressing environmental concerns. A strategic approach ensures that culture remains relevant and resilient. So I'm going to share with you now the cultural strategies, connections and synergies and shared outcomes with other strategies in the council and plans. So the culture strategy is intrinsically linked to within the community and corporate plan, destination management plan, skills and economy strategy, placemaking plans and living well strategy. A vibrant cultural environment enriches experiences for residents and visitors, playing a key role in destination management and reinforcing Monmouthshire's appeal. Cultural events and festivals stimulate job and creation in tourism, hospitality, creative industries, production and event delivery. A strengthened cultural offer can contribute directly to creating sustainable jobs within the county. It's an economic engine, not just a social asset. Strengthening cultural industries through alliances, digital platforms and shared resources will contribute to a more prosperous and sustainable local economy. The strategy supports volunteering pathways, creative sector capacity building and opportunities for young people, helping develop a skilled local cultural workforce. Cultural programmes help reduce isolation and support community cohesion through volunteering, cultural champions and intergenerational engagement. Cultural activity creates belonging, participation and creative expression, and also strengthens community identity and well-being through participation, inspiration and inclusive activity. This strategy aims to increase engagement, enhance perceptions of culture and create more equitable access, especially for underrepresented groups, leading to healthier, more connected communities. So the journey for us, for the cultural strategy you see before you today, we started nearly 3 years ago as a pilot with the Creative Industries Cluster Hubs, who worked with 3 local authorities, ourselves, Newport and Rhondda and Taff, on a 9-month project which was aimed at connecting new and existing talent with wider networks, opportunities and collaborations, and better understand the individuals and organisations working within the locations. From this work, we were able to map 267 creative practitioners and businesses through 8 events that 144 people attended. From this work, we were able to commit to the creation of a cultural strategy for the county. In April 2024, we held our first cultural celebration event where 80 creators attended and had the opportunity to network, listen to talks and presentations, and this has continued into 2025 and again this year, with increased attendance, live workshops and a marketplace, as well as the talks and presentations. Both of these events continue to assist us in gathering information to feed into the framework of a cultural strategy. We have held regular networking events with creatives, stakeholders, partners and businesses to listen to what they feel would assist them in developing their skills, businesses and increasing footfall to our communities. We have now mapped over 500 businesses that employ over 2,000 people and have over 300 on a mailing list that we regularly communicate with. We have held and supported events where projects initiatives are showcased to demonstrate the wealth of talent across the county. We have an Art in the Bar in the Borough Theatre where every 6 months we can allow a local artist to present their work, which we're now on to our third artist, which is fabulous for them. And the end of last year, we had an arts festival in Caldecott, which brought together the local community of creatives where they could share their talents, and that is something we will build on for this year. All of the information we gathered during 2024 and 2025 has assisted us in the framework of the cultural strategy that we felt represented what people had told us and reflected the breadth of talent, skills and opportunities within the county. We're then in a position to go out for public consultation on the draft strategy.
Workshops provided interactive sessions to gather creative inputs and foster collaboration within the community. They also facilitated open dialogue and discussion among local participants and stakeholders. All attendees actively participated to influence and assist in shaping the development of the cultural strategy effectively. 93 individuals took part in face-to-face workshops. An online survey through Let's Take Monmouthshire resulted in 135 detailed responses being submitted. Online platforms enabled wider participation, allowing remote and flexible engagement with the community. All responses have been analysed and supported changes and additions to the draft strategy as you have it today. You will see here the key findings from the workshops and the online survey. We have read and analysed the responses and have been able to reflect the new information in the draft strategy, as you can see by the pink wording in the copy you have. Online platforms enabled wide participation, which allow both remote and flexible engagement with the community. On the slide, you will see that the words that were used in our feedback describing Monmouthshire as a cultural county. We see words on there that you would expect: cultural, Cymraeg, storytelling, music and food. We also heard lots of comments about our landscape, about the outdoors, about nature. That was a valued cultural aspect as well from our participants. We see words of what the cultural strategy should be: inclusive, sustainable and dynamic. And we also see positive and negative words: celebration, failure, collaboration. The key changes were made to the draft strategy as a result of the engagement. There is now the inclusion of an executive summary. There's a historical timeline of Monmouthshire, the inclusion of additional events and activities, inclusion of children and young people, the inclusion of promotion into employment in the cultural sector, and focused outcomes and impacts in the action plan.
So looking ahead, where we'd like to be is to have approval and adoption of the cultural strategy, setting up of the Cultural Partnership Forum, a group from the cultural community where representatives from all areas are able to support and deliver the work of the strategy and formulate future action plans. We see this very much as a co-produced strategy. Implement strong frameworks to monitor progress and effectiveness of cultural development initiatives. Use evaluation data to guide and improve future co-produced cultural development. Ensure cultural development creates lasting positive impacts for our communities and stakeholders, and that continuous collaboration with our diverse creative communities to maintain innovation and sustain momentum in cultural projects. So in conclusion, we feel that Monmouthshire's cultural strategy represents a meaningful journey of collaboration and strategic alignment. By continuing to engage creative communities and integrate culture across policies, strategies and plans, the county is poised for a vibrant and sustainable cultural growth. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Thank you for a couple of late attendees. We've got Lisa and Thomas have now joined us, councillors. Thank you, everybody, for listening to all that. Thank you to Rachel and to Tracy. Any questions? Where would we like to start? Who's got their hands up? Councillor Strong. Was that you put your hand up? Yes. Please speak.
Sorry, I'm just unmuting myself. Thanks for that, Tracy. A lot of really good stuff in that document, but clearly it's only a strategy and needs to be implemented. If you'll let me have 4, I'll keep them quite brief. You mentioned the cultural forum with 12 people. I'm a bit concerned that there's a potential there for certain areas or interest groups to be overrepresented at the expense of others. And I just wondering how we're going to combat that. I mean, I note in your heritage timeline, we're going much more for the sort of touristy areas of Monmouthshire. I did a quick count up, and it had 9 references to the Wye Valley, 7 to Abergavenny, 3 to Monmouth, but the combined 8 towns and villages of Sevenside I didn't have a single mention on that on that timeline. So, and I know that there was some references to that sort of. Well, I hesitate to use the word bias, but you know what I mean. In the strategy, I don't want to see a huge committee, which will be over bureaucratic. But we need perhaps to keep the workshops going and so on, so that the various areas are properly represented. A quick one again on heritage. We have very little industrial history, but we do have some railway history as part of that. Obviously, the old station at Tintern, Roggett Country Park, built on the old marshalling yards at Seven Tunnel Junction, and Councillor Dimmock will be well aware of the importance of Sudbrook in her ward, where a village was built for the workers who built the Severn Railway Tunnel, and which still has some really interesting features in that. Third question, for the benefit of people who live here, not a touristy thing, for the people who live here, could we look at dementia-friendly events? I've been to 1 or 2 that were held at the new care home at Port Skewett, which were excellent, featuring music that really encourage people with dementia to engage. But not just having them in care homes, but having them out in the community where the dementia sufferers and their carers and relatives can all come along and enjoy these sort of things together. And then finally, the strategy talks about creating skilled employment and a sustainable economy. Given the links, close links with tourism, how are we going to make sure that we're not just creating relatively low-skilled seasonal jobs? And I know those jobs are important, particularly for students and so on. But we don't really want an economy that's over heavily based upon that. So how is our strategy going to avoid that? So thanks for that. Quite a lot in there, I know, but my apologies.
Very interesting. Tracy, is it all right? Would you like to answer now? Lovely.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. I think I've got all 4, but please correct me if I've missed anything out. So going back to your initial question around the Cultural Forum, when the strategy is adopted and approved, myself and Rachel will start looking at criteria then, a role profile, how we actually market that and people can apply to be part of the forum. We agree with you that all genres need to be represented. We can't afford to have underrepresented group or overrepresented groups, and it does need to capture the whole of Monmouthshire. It needs to capture all of our key areas within the strategies and plans that we have, but also making sure that we do have representation from those that aren't usually around the table as well, and particularly around children and young people, underrepresented groups. You mentioned dementia, but we want to make sure it's as inclusive as possible as well. We are initially thinking of a core group of around 12 people, but that's not to say that's finite. We would certainly be looking then at subgroups, north, south, towns, areas of the action plan that need taking forward. So we still see this as much as having a forum that can help us drive forward the action plan. It's very much a co-produced strategy, and we'd like to make sure that as many people are engaged as possible. And as you mentioned, the networking events, we're certainly going to be continuing with those every month out in the communities, working alongside the cultural and creative businesses that we've already engaged with. You mentioned the timeline. Thank you so much for that feedback. We'll certainly take it away. It's something we've been pulling together. We're always open to any more information. I will make sure that it certainly reflects more of the Sevenside area, and thank you. And if yourself and Councillor Dimmock do have any additional information you want to give us, dates or key facts around Sudbrook and Roggett and Railway, we'll certainly make sure that they're included in the timeline. It's a draft strategy. This is part of the process. So please make sure you send that information to us to include. You mentioned dementia-friendly events. I absolutely agree with you. We need to make sure that every event across the county is as inclusive as possible. I think we're very fortunate within our heritage team. We actually have a dementia-friendly trainer. All our staff are trained in dementia-friendly workshops and being able to work with carers and those who do suffer with dementia. But it goes wider than dementia. We need to make sure that all events are accessible and inclusive right across the county. So thank you for that, and we will certainly make sure that we take that forward. And your final question was around creating skills of employment and making sure that we don't just look to the tourism or pub, cafe kind of employment. We're certainly not looking in those areas because they are well represented already. We'd like to see more employment around skilled jobs within film, technology, theatre, photography, making sure that they are valued skills for our young people. And we know there's an urge there from young people to come forward and actually engage in these more high-level skilled employability areas across the county. We know that Monmouthshire is a fantastic film location. We should be engaging more with those film companies that come here to see what they can offer whilst they're here, what experiences can they give our communities to make sure that they're aware of what's available to them as well. So thank you, and I hope I've answered that question, but it's certainly something we want to make sure we explore more.
Thank you. Councillor Strong, are you happy with that, or do you want?
Yes. Just quickly. Thanks for that. A lot of reassurance there. Clearly, a lot of work to do. I look forward to engaging more on this in the future. I'll certainly send you a couple of dates about the Severn Tunnel and so on. And maybe we can also encourage the list of choirs that you mentioned to include the Caldecott Male Voice Choir, which is excellent. So thank you very much.
I'm dying to ask, do you sing in it?
I think it would close down very rapidly if I did.
There's no such thing as you can't sing, okay? I just let that be told.
I might test you on that sometime, Jane.
Yeah, please do. Okay, Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, I'd question the need for a separate cultural strategy, and wondered whether it would be better to combine it with tourism and culture, because there is quite a lot of overlap. You know, for example, in relation to heritage assets, only from my Google search, only about 1 or 2 local authorities in Wales have printed a cultural strategy, and some of them, like Newport, actually have more practical outcomes. You know, for example, you know, there are historic buildings like heritage buildings are actually, part of the outcomes of, because that encourages tourism as well, because, you have museums and you have castles and you also have heritage assets. I mean, I know, for example, that the Shire Hall has had, lottery money basically to help that be renovated. And I think that part of the estate that is part of the heritage assets that the council owns, I think that, you need to be looking at in the Newport one, they actually listed assets that they wanted to improve, by getting I suppose eventually they get national lottery grants and other things. But it also links in with tourism because of the fact that people will be visiting museums, castles and other historic places as part and parcel of tourism. And, I did actually, look for things that you could do in Monmouthshire if you were a tourist. But I mean, things like local history talks, like you can go around a town and, point out particular things, or even in villages. So I think it needs to be narrowed down to be a bit more local in terms of what the villages actually do, and a list of assets. And for example, I mean the bridges and the former Abergavenny Library are owned by the council, and they've got a distinct history and heritage to them, and they could also be a tourist attraction. I mean, for example, Carnegie libraries in Wales, there isn't any museum for that, and in fact there actually is a project going on at I think one of the Cardiff universities, looking at all the Carnegie libraries, and basically they were doing a map of where they were, and I noticed and how you renovate these and how you basically go about doing it so that they then become a community asset. So there's a specific building programme on that, and I think I would like to see, as opposed to forums, I would like to see more positive outcomes in terms of improving the heritage assets and estates of that. And I think looking through some of the comments, for example, Chepstow Castle, I think that's sort of privately owned as opposed to Caldecott Castle. But again, I don't know in terms of entrances. They ought to have a sort of a discount for Monmouthshire people as opposed to, because I think there was a comment about saying it was too expensive for a lot of people to go to. So I think that's a point. I did actually my consultation response is on page 70 and 71. And I was pleased that you put in a bit more of the history, but I would like it narrowed down to more of the local village grassroots type of history. I gave examples there in Mathern and Earlswood. There are interesting historical things that people don't necessarily know about, rather than the bigger areas, as it were. We're hoping to try and get some support to, for example, for St Tudoric's Well in Mathern to be cleaned out, because it's got in a bit of a mess, but that's got a real history to it, linked into the church. On the faith side, I didn't know whether or not the faith actually should be included, because I was concerned that it fails to reflect the traditional and cultural values in Monmouthshire, which are still Christian, as the census 2021 showed that is the stated religion about half of the population of Monmouthshire, and fails to include important events of Christmas and Easter, including the turning on of the Christmas lights in the market towns. I don't know whether I think you included a little bit on that. But, I mean, there's also things that are missing in Monmouthshire that you can find in other towns of similar size. I mean, for example, in Macclesfield, which is a town that's very similar to the size of Chepstow, it's got its own old cinema where local people can go, and because the cinema hasn't got it's got the old cinema seats, for a very reduced fee you can see up-to-date films, whereas we have to go off to either Bristol or Newport. And it's the same with sort of major theatre productions. You've got to either go to Bristol or Cardiff to see anything of note in the South Wales area. So those were just a few comments on that. And obviously, I presume that the cost of the cultural strategy, I don't know, was it about £12,000 to have it produced? And I don't know, is that correct? Or did you have it done by an external person, or did you did it internally, did you? Oh, well done on that. Because the tourism one was done externally, I believe. Yeah. So I mean, at least that saved the council some fees in doing that. So I suppose it's going more to the grassroots thing and having more concrete outcomes, as opposed to forums. That I think would be helpful within it, and also how this would link in to actually getting grants from other sources where there's gaps, and I don't think that was necessarily explored in this. The sort of grants. I mean, there's Welsh Government arts grants and things like that, and there's no section on where local groups might be able to actually who want to start activities will be able to go to help with those sort of things, if they wanted to have an art exhibition, or if they wanted to do something within a museum or something like that, and obviously we have got buildings within the council estates, like museums, that possibly local people could have their own art exhibitions or sell their own amateur paintings or something like that. So I just wondered whether we could get it down to more grassroots level on that sort of thing, but more wider for things like cinema and theatre. The other thing I wanted to say was that obviously in Chepstow you do have the drill hall that basically does do some activities, but the films that they put forward aren't the reasonably contemporary. They aren't sort of like the sort of ones that you'd see in the cinema as an option. And obviously they're increasing the car parking charges there. In terms of the drill hall itself, one of the issues there is local business people who are in the town may use that to park because it's a bit cheaper for an all-day parking. But the issue is that between the town and the drill hall, the street lighting is very poor. So people are somewhat reluctant to use a car park there. And also I think just going on, this is straying a bit from this, but also car parking is sort of part of the issue of tourism as well. And I think it will be useful. They're putting up the car parking charges. I think it'd be useful if instead of charging they're going from £2.20 to £2.30 for 2 hours in say Nelson Street car park, but why don't they offer a 1 hour for £1.20 or something like that? Because tourists coming in, particularly if they're coming in on a coach, well, I suppose if they're coming in on a coach, they won't need a car. But if they're coming in for a visit and they just want to nip somewhere else, then if they're changing from the drill hall car park to another car park, it's not necessarily worthwhile doing that. And that helps local businesses. But I've strayed off the subject a bit, and I'm going to be told off soon by the chair. Thank you.
Well, about to. You can feel me saying it. Okay, right. I think there's an awful lot going on there. Some good ideas. All right, Tracy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Brown. There was an awful lot of information in that, and I hope we've taken notes as well. But we will certainly take on board some of the comments you've made now. I think we do acknowledge that the cultural strategy is more broader rather than reflecting local right down into grassroots activity. But we do know what goes on there. It's how we're going to reflect that as the strategy evolves. We need a starting point. We will have a forum and we have regular networking events held in all areas from the towns and smaller communities where we are meeting with the creative community, businesses, those that have got employment opportunities as well. We do offer facilities for artists to come in and hang their artwork, sell their jewellery, ceramics. So we've already started that in the last 12 months. Maybe we just haven't reflected that enough in the strategy for you to see the progress we've actually made already. But, you know, we will take on board a lot of those things. I don't think we're going to be able to do everything all at once. Some of those buildings you mentioned aren't within the council's remit. So it will be forging those relationships with those groups now to see how we can actually benefit our tourists and also to strengthen our cultural identity as Monmouthshire. So I hope that's okay as a response, because it was an awful lot of that you've given us rather than direct questions, but I'll certainly take that away and come back to you if there's anything that you feel we haven't covered.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I think the advantage, if I can come back, Chair, I think the advantage of the Newport one is that as opposed to forums, they actually put particular buildings and things that they were going to try and work on. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brown, Craig would like a word.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Just before I come in there, really, in terms of the council's sort of suite of strategies and projects it's got in terms of addressing some of the facts that you're talking about there. So destination management plan specifically focused on visitor economy, infrastructure, our marketing position, and how we create that sustainable growth in that tourism area. This cultural strategy then is a slightly different element, different take on it ultimately, and looking at the arts, theatre, thinking about people and how not just tourists but residents as well engage in culture. So I think that is a key thing then. I think they do slightly two different documents, but obviously they speak to each other. And in a similar way that you're talking about the built environment and how we look after that. So we have the placemaking plans to look after the built environment, and we also have the buildings at risk, which look at our listed buildings and our heritage assets and make sure that we are protecting them. So if you look at the suite of documents the council have got across the organisation, they're looking at those bits that you're talking about. And I guess the cultural strategy here is emphasising that people experience and how we are diverse and how we can create that economic growth from a diverse society, and then the tourist is focusing on that sustainable growth, and then the built environment is taken in the placemaking plans, building at risks, and our planning policy framework as well. So just to give you that reassurance that there's not one document which stands alone. These all documents are all speaking to each other, and we're then holistically dealing with place ultimately. So I just want to give you that bit of a distinction in terms of how this is working and how we're trying to get all of these strategies and projects speaking to each other.
That's great. Thank you very much, Craig. Right. Come on, you've had your moment, Louise. All right, Councillor Emma Bryn, please. Hi, Emma. Come and speak to us.
Hi. Thanks, Diolch, Chair, and thanks to Rachel and Tracy for presenting this today. I've only got 3 brief points to make, if that's okay. Can you tell me, will the final strategy contain links so that readers can easily learn more about the amazing events listed within the document, the events and the places listed within the document, such as there's like a list on page 11, rather than just having to kind of Google them? I think direct links would be perhaps more useful. Do you feel that the strategy offers sufficiently strong support for volunteers and community-led events? The strategy acknowledges that volunteers are an integral part of Monmouthshire's cultural vibrancy, so ensuring their continued support and sustainability should be of paramount importance. So I'd like to kind of see perhaps more a stronger action points on how these volunteer groups are to be supported. And just a little niggle really, I'd like to have seen one of the welcomes on page 3 presented as croeso. Even non-Welsh speakers recognise the word, and including incidental Welsh in a cultural strategy would be positive and a meaningful reflection on our identity. Diolch.
Chair, sorry, I was just thinking about what Emma just said, and yeah, okay. Rachel, just also to let you know that Hazel here has put in Councillor Louise's points in the chat, should you want to catch each one. Okay, hang on. Sorry, hang on a moment, Louise. Rachel and anybody? Tracy, sorry.
Hi, thank you, Councillor Bryn. Yes, we can look at the links. I think we're just mindful of links can get broken, etc. So we just need to be mindful of that. But I think that's a really good call there. Definitely, I think we can look at some stronger action around volunteering and how we capture that. It's certainly what we got from our discussions with the community is just how strong that volunteer element is. So if that hasn't been reflected enough, then we do need to do that more. With the incidental Welsh, the whole document will obviously be translated, but I think, and then something we did talk about in the early stages about using some of that incidental Welsh as well. So we can relook at that and see how we can kind of combine that with in it. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I saw Councillor Tudor Thomas. Hello, Tudor. Would you like to have a word?
Yes, yeah, thanks. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Emma Bryn has said. I think we tend to forget that Monmouthshire is obviously on the Wales side of Offers Dyke. It is not Herefordshire, it's not Worcester. It is a Welsh county. And I think it's very important. Yes, I take the point about the document being translated into Welsh, but I think on a day-to-day basis, lots of people might not look at that. And I think we need to sort of signpost strongly. And I can appreciate it is difficult. It's you know, I really appreciate the work that you've done. But I do think we need to highlight that we've got 3 primary schools now within Monmouthshire, Welsh medium primary schools. We've got a number of children going to Ysgol Gyfun East Coed in Newport, and also Ysgol Gyfun Gwyn Lliw in Pontypool. And that is important for them and for their parents. And we've got quite a high number of people learning the language, and that particularly shot up after the highly successful Eisteddfod Genedlaethol, the National Eisteddfod in 2016, which brought so many people into this county. Many people who hadn't been here before, particularly from North Wales, and certainly contacts I had, they just said, yes, we will come back. We didn't realise what a marvellous place Monmouthshire, the countryside, etc., etc. So I think we do need to signpost that, and I think we need to sort of up the incidental Welsh. But I'm really grateful for the report. It's very constructive. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Tracy, Rachel?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And yeah, absolutely, we agree with you. We'll certainly take that away. For reassurance, even though it's going to be translated, it's one document translation. So printed copy and online will be Welsh first and then English. So it'll be a dual document rather than 2 independent documents. So it is available in the language of Welsh immediately for people. Certainly take on board your point about the schools. We have got the Eisteddfod mentioned in 2016, but we'll certainly strengthen that again, because I think it was, like you say, a turning focal point for Monmouthshire, especially around learning language. So yeah, thank you for the comments, and we'll take those on board.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions for anybody? Yeah, Hazel's just making sure you've got Louise's comments. They're in the comments of the chat of the meeting, okay? And so you can respond to them. Right, okay. Thank you ever so much to you both. It's very interesting. I certainly found it interesting to learn about certain things. And I personally am very appreciative of the work that's going on in Shire Hall and the complexity of that and how it's going to evolve. So that's my personal touch on that one, because I certainly am aware of that one. And I'm sure everybody else is in their own areas for their own reasons. And it's great to hear other views. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for the report. And I look forward to seeing it further. Okay, so we'll just take a moment of a break to swap everybody around. Thank you, guys. Okay, again, welcome to our officers Kate Stinchcombe and Colette Bosley. They are now going to do biodiversity, item 8, biodiversity and resilience, to scrutinise the Section 6 report to the Welsh Government on biodiversity and resilience of ecosystems. So welcome, ladies. I hope you're well, and it will be interesting to hear what you have to say. So over to you when you are ready.
I just need to open the presentation.
That's not a problem. We can give you a moment for that. Whilst we're doing that, I will recap on what was just done in the last one, if you wish. Thank you to the comments, particularly from Councillor Peter Strong, conscious of the forum and to make sure it's equally representation for the whole of Monmouthshire rather than any one area, and make sure the groups were even, dementia friendly, and of course Severn Tunnel. Councillor Emma Bryn, make sure that the volunteers element was really exacerbated, and making sure it's well known and to appreciate what they get up to. And they are huge part of what happens, certainly in my area. And of course the Welsh bits as well, and where Councillor Tudor Thomas mentioned about and reiterated what Councillor Bryn had said in reference to the Welsh having some front headings in Welsh. And then also we've got Councillor Brown for the overlapping with tourism and the grassroots and all the items that could perhaps be crossed over. So thank you both all for that. And if you ladies are ready, we will crack on with you. So I reiterate, this is item 8, biodiversity and resilience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So today we have got up, hopefully, on the screen, and everybody can see it, our presentation. We've brought this basically to you today, really, to talk around the Council's statutory Section 6 Biodiversity and Ecosystems Resilience report for 2024-25. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful, and there's a lot of words I know that we're going to sort of to go through, but bear with us. We'll get through it. So the purpose of the report today is to update on progress in achieving our objectives set out in the Biodiversity and Ecosystems Resilience Forward Plan, which was approved in 2024. The report is for information only, not for decision, and it fulfils the Council's duty under the Environment Wales Act 2016, which requires every local authority to maintain and enhance biodiversity in all its functions and report on its activities. We're required in law to report on this every 3 years on progress. So, as you can see from hopefully the presentation there, the context, and as you will know, the context is fairly stark. The most recent State of Natural Resources report, 2025, fairly recently published, shows long-term decline across Wales and Gwent. The report highlights Wales is one of the most nature-depleted countries globally, with 1 in 5 species at risk of extinction. Only 40% of Welsh water bodies are in good overall status due to pollution from multiple sectors. Over 90% of Wales' land is used for agriculture, making farming central to nature recovery efforts. Wales uses more natural resources than the planet can sustain, and if everyone lived like this, well, we'd need more than 2 Earths to support us. Climate change is already impacting all ecosystems in Wales, reducing resilience and intensifying other pressures. In 2021, the Climate Change Risk Assessment for Wales highlighted projected changes across Gwent, with warmer and wetter winters, hotter and drier summers, high variability of extreme weather, increasing our exposure to weather-related hazards, increased frequency of wildfires, flooding and water scarcity, as well as increased coastal erosion. So this reinforces why our statutory responsibilities matter and why strong and consistent delivery is essential across all council services. Over the past 2 years, we've delivered significant work against the 8 objectives of our Section 6 Forward Plan. These include embedding biodiversity into decision-making, improving our land management for nature, influencing wider landowners, tackling pressures on species, and working at landscape scale with partners. The report sets out strong progress. Case studies highlight the impact of our work on the Replacement Local Development Plan, the Healthy Rivers Project, the Mill Common Project, the Gwent Green Grid Biotapestry, and the delivery of the Monmouthshire Nature Recovery Action Plan. These examples all demonstrate how we are supporting resilient ecosystems, improving ecological networks, and delivering health and well-being benefits for residents. We do, however, acknowledge the challenges, and these include conflicting legislation. So, for example, event licensing, public perception around our nature is neat grassland management, and increasing pressure where statutory duties rely on external grant funding. Looking forward, the report proposes only minor updates to the forward plan, including 2 new milestones: the appointment of a highways and operations ecologist and delivery of a management strategy for the Nedham Brook. We also propose updated measures to better track progress, such as the extent of the Nature is Neat land and the number of sites with green infrastructure management plans. The integrated impact assessment confirms that this work strongly supports the wellbeing goals, with particular benefits for a healthier Wales, a resilient Wales, and cohesive communities. In summary, this report demonstrates strong delivery, identifies realistic improvements, and keeps us on track with our responsibilities. So I'll hand over to Kate now, who will take us through the rest of the presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So the Biodiversity and Ecosystems Resilience, or Section 6 for short, report, is because we have this duty that Colette has alluded to. The duty under Section 6 of the Environment Wales Act means that we must seek to maintain and enhance biodiversity where it's within the proper exercise of our functions. And we must promote the resilience of ecosystems in what we do. So we have to take a proactive approach to improve and not reduce biodiversity when carrying out our normal functions. So in terms of the timeline, the Act was, it's dated 2016, that's when it was adopted, when it came into force. And by the end of 2017, we were one of the first authorities in Wales to develop our biodiversity and ecosystem resilience, also known as a forward plan. And we've reported twice already, in 2019 and 2023. And then in 24, we took the opportunity alongside the refresh of the Climate and Nature Emergency Strategy to publish a refreshed forward plan to bring it up to date. And here we are now at our 3rd statutory reporting round. Just to give you a little bit of context then, because this might sound like something that you've scrutinised before, and you think, hang on, why are we doing this again? So the Section 6 plan sits within the nature recovery pillar of the Climate and Nature Emergency Strategy. I'm sure you're all familiar with that diagram. The nature recovery pillar is actually made up of 3 discrete areas that have different statutory drivers, and they're for different purposes as well. So the plan that we're here today discussing is the one in the orange box, the Section 6 Biodiversity and Ecosystem Resilience Plan. So that's a statutory requirement. The forward plan was approved by Cabinet in May 2024 as part of the Nature and Climate Strategy. And the audience for it is really Monmouthshire County Council and our close partners. So it's for us, it's what we are going to do. And there is statutory reporting, and in terms of consultation, it's essentially internal MCC staff that form part of that work. And it sits alongside these other 2 plans that you may remember coming through the political process in May 25. So that's the Nature Recovery Action Plan and the GI Strategy, which have different sort of remits and audiences. So in terms of governance and delivery mechanisms, this isn't just an act that one particular department in the council is responsible for. It needs to be embedded through everything that we do. So there are, we all have a part to play. Obviously, services directly delivering green infrastructure potentially have potential to deliver more, but we also have to consider other service areas and where there are potential conflicts. And then our close partnerships that we host, like the Local Nature Partnership and the Gwent Green Grid Partnership, which are big delivery mechanisms, and also the Wye Valley National Landscape. So in May 24, when we published our forward plan, we updated our objectives. Sorry, it's a little bit small, the text on this slide, but I will go through what the objectives are. So objective 1 is about embedding biodiversity through all our decision making. So actually being here in Scrutiny now is addressing part of that objective. It's how we consider our corporate policy and our strategic plans and policies, even down to planning decisions and operational decisions. Objective 2 is around nature-based opportunities for engagement and raising awareness. So that's all the lovely environmental education and health and well-being activity that we do. Objective 3 is how we undertake land management on our own land to promote biodiversity and ecosystem resilience. Objective 4 is around influencing others, so being that best practice example and also supporting others to make changes, as we've seen with the regenerative farming projects and natural flood management. Objective 5 is about tackling key pressures on species and habitats. So that could be through our development management process or invasive non-native species control. Objective 6 is around supporting landscape scale projects, which Monmouthshire is particularly strong at doing. Objective 7 is around using improved evidence to make our decisions. And Objective 8 is around monitoring and review. So these quite closely align to Welsh Government's Nature Recovery Action Plan policies with a sort of Monmouthshire twist on them. We've added a bit more about partnership working and health and well-being in terms of the nature-based opportunities as well. So I'm sure you will have seen the action plan that was appended to the report that has kind of really detailed input from all the officers across the authority who are involved in delivering the Section 6 duty. So for each objective in the action plan, we've covered who the responsible service areas are, timescales for delivery, the associated funding, so whether that's core funding, partially funded, or it relies on external grant funding. Also cited in refers to other plans, so quite a lot of complementary action with, for example, the Motion for Ocean and Rivers plan. How we're measuring the progress that we've made during this plan period, and then a RAG rating, red, amber, green rating. So that detail is in the one of the attachments that you would have had today for each of those actions. So the other thing that you will have seen in that attachment is in relation to milestones and measures, which we have across all the climate and nature plans. So for this plan, the milestones, some of them we are proposing to remove because they've been completed during this plan period. And some of them we're proposing to retain because there's still more to do. So, for example, with the Replacement Local Development Plan and the Nature Recovery Action Plan, whilst we've published those documents, when the journey isn't over yet, there's still some more work to do on them. And similarly for the Tree Warden Scheme, there has been a commencement, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's at full launch yet. We've proposed 2 new milestones, as Colette mentioned, excitingly, a new ecologist role that will work with highways and operations to ensure that they are meeting their Section 6 duties. And also we now have some machinery that's on order to help us implement the management strategy for the Ned and Brook as well. In terms of measures, again, quite a few of those we are planning to retain into the new plan. I'll take this opportunity to promote the Nature Recovery e-learn that's on the Thinky platform. If elected members are interested in undertaking that, if you go to the training platform and search for Nature Recovery, there's a lovely e-learn module on there that everybody is invited to take part in. And for some of our measures here, we don't yet know what the target numbers are because they will depend on what funding is approved in the next month or so. So we're waiting on Nature Networks funding, for example, and we're waiting on some of the natural flood management applications as well. So we'll have a better idea when it comes to the next climate and nature reporting, what those measures will look like. And the new measures that we're proposing are around operational training, nature isn't neat, land hectarage, the number of sites with a green infrastructure management plan, and that says the same thing twice, does it? Possibly. Oh, that how many plans there are? Yeah, how many management plans and how many sites are managed in accordance with them, because we'll have some new GI management plan sites. And then again, number of county farms taking part in activity as exemplars is something that we'll be working with colleagues in the Food Partnership on. So the case studies then, you may have had a chance to have a look through these, but I'll quickly cover some slides on these. These are our 5 case studies. The Healthy Rivers Project is a Gwent Green Grid initiative funded through Nature Networks. We've done quite a lot of work with the community in Abergavenny to basically reconnect people to their watercourse so they realise how special it is. So this is around practical conservation, education and citizen science. And there was a very successful otter training at the weekend, and the geology talk we could fill 3 times over for this. So there's a lot of engagement in the community in relation to the river. The Mill Common Restoration Plan, again, some of you may be familiar with. So this was a woodland investment grant project that's running until June this year, around habitat management, community engagement, and there's been significant ash dieback removal on the site in Megawithundi as well. The Local Nature Recovery Action Plan, as I mentioned earlier, that's one of our case studies, as well as something that we have adopted and issued a community action plan for, and we continue to meet with our local nature partnership to develop habitat and species actions for that plan. And then last but not by no, oh, actually it's not the last one, there is one more. The penultimate one is planning advice and embedding biodiversity and green infrastructure into our planning decisions. So we've got quite a strong history of working with our planning colleagues to deliver good quality green infrastructure schemes. And that's seen as a really important mechanism for delivering nature recovery in planning. And as we've seen with the replacement local development plan, we have new nature recovery policy and the specific action, specific policy relating to Severn Estuary as well. And this is really the last one, the biotapestry. So the biotapestry is an innovative engagement initiative, again delivered through the Gwent Green Grid Partnership. And this is our 70-metre panel that we've been working across the region on. You can see at the Caldicot hub, you can see the panel. There was the Monmouthshire woodland panel with the hawfinch and the dormouse. You may have seen it in the newsletter before Christmas. And that will be on display from the 6th of March in the Riverfront Theatre in Newport. And I have actually got, if it's okay for me to share, Chair, a short video of the biotapestry. It's only about a minute long. If I just bring that up. We might not get the sound.
Great. Right, thank you very much. Oh, sound. There we go. All right, thank you very much. Very interesting. Okay, I see Councillor Dimmock has a hand up, so without further ado, Councillor Dimmock.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And that was a really interesting presentation and some great projects you're working on there. I want to ask some questions regarding planning. Obviously, you say that you're heavily embedded within the planning system. I've had development in my ward where there's been 2 planning applications where soil imports paperwork doesn't meet NRW's requirements, and also water quality discharge sampling not meeting NRW's requirements. These planning applications are still not determined, and I wondered, how do we resolve this going forward? Do we allow that to slip? You know, what is the process of Monmouthshire Council, and how do you direct the planning department on how to deal with these issues? Because obviously there have a huge concern, considering this site is running alongside the Severn Estuary. Thank you, Chair.
That's okay. I assume by Craig's head nodding that he wanted to do this one, or no? Okay. They're fighting over who wants to answer now. Okay, one of them would like to answer. We'll let them decide.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think we've all got some thoughts, perhaps, so probably a few of us can chip in. I think, you know, we're working through those processes. We do recognise that there are issues and outstanding matters to deal with. And it's not something that we're unfamiliar with. We are a part of that engagement process with the biodiversity officers. They do feed into that process, and they have flagged up and highlighted the number of issues in relation to those particular sites, without mentioning them in particular. But we are working with our colleagues to try and find solutions to that. I don't know whether there's anything, sorry, Kate, more you want to specifically add, or Craig, but you know, without going into the detail, which obviously there's quite a bit of detail around that, and we can probably come back to you separately on an individual basis in relation to those applications. We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, Colette, because I have been chasing for an outcome on this one in particular, and I know the council are progressing with adopting this site, which my concern is that we're inheriting these ongoing issues, which are pretty serious issues as well. So yeah, I'd welcome that. Thank you.
It's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
A pleasure. Okay, anybody else got their hands up? Councillor Louise Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to ask a couple of questions in relation to the planning side, because obviously from the planning point of view, they're supposed to be on planning applications and net biodiversity gain. And I'm not sure who actually, I have difficulty identifying who the biodiversity officer for planning actually is. So that would be helpful. But again, in my ward, a couple of biodiversity issues have arisen, you know. So, for example, I mean, obviously I won't mention what the cases are, but, you know, one of them might be where somebody gets a planning approval, and basically it's a 5-year approval, and they basically start a little bit of the work. You know, if you only sort of dig a spade in, it starts the process of the original application, even though it's years ahead. And then if the site becomes more overgrown, then there are sort of biodiversity issues with regard to clearing the site. And then what happens if they're cleared and those biodiversity issues aren't taken account of? And the other issue might be where, for example, there's a green infrastructure plan where they were supposed to put trees and hedges and various other things, and they haven't, and then they make a subsequent planning application which they would put structures on top of where the trees and so forth should have been. So obviously this is a link with enforcement or whatever. So I'm just wondering how these things are connected and how you monitor the management plans. And then going on to 2 or 3 other issues, or should I leave that one and then come back?
I think that's a good idea, Councillor Brown.
Thank you.
Sorry, Colette.
Again, I'll start, and Kate, if you want to, without mentioning specifics, obviously. And we, you know, if there are particular sites, as we have extended the offer to Councillor Dimmock, we offer, you know, the extension. If there are particular sites, we'd be happy to look at those from yourself as well. But we do have biodiversity officers who respond specifically on development management cases. We don't have a big resource. I acknowledge that, and we do recognise that. We've got 1.5 resource. We just lost our biodiversity full-time post just before Christmas, and we're due to hopefully tomorrow appoint a new one into that role, and also the other 0.5 as well in the coming weeks. So we are down on resources at the moment, but we are battling through, and we do have a number of officers still within the authority who are picking up on that, who are biodiversity ecologists responding on those applications. So resources is a stretch, there's no doubt about that, but in terms of the numbers of consultee responses that those officers are responding to is quite significant. On average, they've been responding to around about 400 or 500 consultee responses over the course of a year. So it's been increasing constantly as well. So big response, caseload there, to be honest. And I know that's reflected across all the planning at the moment. We do have a big caseload and not enough officers frequently to deal with all these things. But just in terms of obviously, trying to address those specifics, I think, where there are issues, we try to, address them within the context of our legal duties. So we do have GI management plans. We do try to ensure that they are delivered for the long term. There are 20-year, in some cases, management plans, which are part of the planning obligations, which are considered and permitted. But those plans are difficult, as I say, in terms of the biodiversity officers to enforce. We do have the enforcement team, and where we can, we work collectively and collaboratively together to address those, but working, with applicants as well as best we can to address what we can achieve most positively for those sites. So I don't know if there's anything more, Kate, you'd like to add.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to mention that, so for net benefit for biodiversity, we usually try and secure that on a plan before we grant planning permission. So when the plans come to planning committee, there should be a detail of what that net benefit for biodiversity is. I know not all of them come to planning committee, but that should be obvious what those are. In terms of sites that start and don't finish and then have potential to kind of become home for wildlife in the interim period, I think it depends on the scale of the site. So for bigger sites, if there's a risk of that happening, what we tend to do is we can use a planning condition that asks them to monitor the site in the interim period. So even if they do start, if I'm picking an example, the maybe site in Chepstow, the big housing site there, because we knew it was going to be over such a long period, we had them doing monitoring during that period, so that if anything new moved in that interim, that it would be picked up and would need to be considered. But yeah, it is an issue, and particularly for smaller scale sites as well, because it might not be considered proportionate for us to ask the applicant to continue providing us surveys until they finish the work. But yeah, there is a risk.
Thank you. Oh, Craig would like to have a word.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to give members a bit of additional advice, well, not a bit of additional information as well, actually. So in terms of the enforcement functions, planning enforcement, you mentioned there, Councillor Brown, we have actually been successful in bolstering that team recently. So we have got a new principal enforcement officer joining us the next few months. So that is good news, ultimately, in terms of taking enforcement action across the county. So we will have a little resource in there. So using the biodiversity officers, working with our enforcement officers to take action against any unacceptable or unauthorised work will certainly help us.
Okay. Colette, I was just wondering, could you answer what GI meant? Because I didn't know.
Yes, so I was just going to actually explain that, because I thought that might come up. So GI is green infrastructure. So what we have in Monmouthshire is we were one of the first councils. The first council in Wales to actually develop a green infrastructure policy approach towards development management. Which means basically we deliver across multiple sort of service areas. So we embrace colleagues from landscape biodiversity, countryside access, play, all areas, active travel, SAB, to come together effectively to put a response together on applications to consider the whole multidisciplinary issues, rather than sort of respond in a silo, if you like. So we've kind of broken new ground across Wales to bring that approach together, and that approach now has been embedded within the council for a number of years, and we're trying to sort of make sure that that's delivered in our green infrastructure approach for all applications that come forward over a certain level. So that collaborative approach is quite a sort of, you know, strong one, and I think Monmouthshire leads the way in our ability to do that. So I think we've got quite a lot of planning guidance as well, which enables us to do that, and that's seen with our biodiversity checklists in our green infrastructure supplementary planning guidance, and all of our supporting checklists and householder advice that we've got as well. So quite a lot of information which we try to sort of help applicants in going forward as well and giving them advice.
Okay, thank you. I did know the green structure if I thought about it long enough, I have to say. Okay, Councillor Grocott would like to have a word. And I'm sorry, Peter Strong was first. Would you mind, Councillor Grocott? Is that okay? Okay.
No. Let Councillor Grocott go first. No problem.
Yeah, and then Tudor. So, sorry, just have to wait a moment. Is that all right? Okay, Councillor Peter Strong.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Sharp-eyed councillors might have noticed that the picture of the bio tapestry at Caldecott Hub, that was Councillor Jackie Strong actually sewing that. But
you've stolen my thunder. I was going to save that.
Right, yeah.
And we had John Cook. No, you can't mention.
We did have John Cook. Yeah.
You've got to mention John Cook there with a spade.
Oh yes, he was there as well. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I welcome the report. There's a lot of interest in there. I particularly welcome the reference to the Nedden Brook, and I'm hoping that we can have an invitation to the relevant people to come and talk to the Sevenside Area Forum about that, where we can drill down into that in a bit of detail. But I want to pick up on nature isn't neat. I was a bit concerned that the references to feedback on nature isn't neat in the report, it came over a little bit dismissive by just calling it pushback. And I think there are more legitimate concerns that perhaps need to be looked at, particularly when we have this campaign that's mentioned in the report. I think the key questions are how are we going to ensure that we get a sort of correct balance between nature and neat, and how are we going to, as with climate change issues, how are we going to make sure that we carry our people with us? I had no idea when I became a councillor that vegetation would feature so heavily in my caseload, but it seems to exercise the minds of a lot of people. And I do get complaints, for example, the sort of weeds and that grow on the edge of our roads and on the edge of the roadside of our pavements. And I know as it implies in the report, that's not part of nature isn't neat, but our people think it is. And we need to sort of deal with that because people don't like to have unnecessarily scruffy surroundings. They need to feel that their communities are being looked after, and I'm not sure we actually achieve that in those sort of cases. I get complaints that some open areas are mown more often than others, and I see the logic behind only mowing certain areas once or at most perhaps twice a year. Although it has to be accepted that can make them inaccessible for play. So there is a bit of a contradiction there in terms of our different policies. And also there seems to be a difference between policy and practice in terms of disposal of grassland. As I understand it, when it's mowed, the policy on the bigger areas of grassland is to put it in very small, discrete, well, really spread it in small, discrete heaps along hedgerows so that it's barely visible. Whereas what sometimes happens in practice is it's just dumped in very large piles, which can be a bit of an eyesore. Now, none of that is to be in any way critical of our grounds team and so on. I have to say the responses I always get and help I always get from Nigel and Jonathan and the team there has always been first class, but they are concerns that residents have raised and they need to be taken seriously and not in any way sort of put under the heading of pushback. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Colette or Kate?
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry about that term of language in terms of pushback. It was a word that I'd use, and I didn't realise that it would be taken in that way. I suppose what I was trying to demonstrate is that there is a differing view sometimes and that is valid. But what I will say is that where we have had challenges, we do get also a lot of support. So we, taking a recent example with a project that we've done at Gilwern and Gilwern Common, we had some negative comment then around changes to grassland management there, but we had 4 times the amount of positive support when the community started to get concerned that we might move away from meadow management in that area. And in that case, we kind of resolved the issue with the community council. So it is a very difficult balance. What I will say is the teams really know their sites, and as you say, John Wassell has all of the sites mapped out across the county of where this kind of management is undertaken, and it evolves throughout the season as well, depending on how the growing season is going. So some areas are mown more than others, and that might be how they're used as well. So what I will say is that it's kind of constantly being monitored, constantly being reviewed, and the grounds team have that flexibility. When it comes to what we do with the arisings, it is reflective of where it's a bit of a postcode lottery when it comes to what happens with the grass cuttings, because in some parts of the county they can be taken away and put into a mulcher, for example, at Troy Depot, but in other parts of the county that isn't possible, and so they are left on site. What I will say is that we are undertaking some training with the operatives this spring, refresher training on the Nature Isn't Neat principles, and we will discuss all of these issues that do come up. And then we are, after the election, we'll be doing another members seminar. After May, we'll do a member seminar before the summer, because most of the issues arise sort of towards the end of July. That's when the complaints usually start, particularly if it's been a very strong growing season like it was in 2025, the grass gets long. So we'll do a member seminar, and then we're doing a campaign then. So we'll talk more about the positives of grassland and leaving longer areas of grass, particularly around pollinators, water storage and carbon storage as well. So we'll focus on those things as part of our summer campaign. And also undertake a public perception survey, which we'll push out through Let's Talk Monmouthshire. We did that in about 3 or 4 years ago, and the overwhelming response was positive in that. So I think, we do need to take another kind of pulse check on where we are with public perception on Nature Isn't Neat now.
Okay. Oh, Colette would like a word. Thank you.
Just to add to that, really, and as part of that sort of, public perception approach, where we are taking that pulse check, the intention is very much to listen as well, to understand what the issues are, and to make sure that in doing that, we are, reflecting what communities want. So we do recognise that there have been, concerns and issues, but those, we are keen to understand where we can work better together. So,
thank you very much. Councillor Strong, are you happy with all that?
Yeah, just briefly, I think clearly often it's a matter of communication, isn't it? People tend to be supportive if they know what's going on and why, and we don't always get that over to people. And I know communication is always a nightmare trying to get to everybody, but it's clearly put. That's why I welcome the public perception survey, the members seminar, and so on, and indeed the refresher training for the grounds team. So that's all progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Tudor Thomas. Hello, Tudor.
Okay, diolch Cadeirydd, thanks. Just a couple of points. I was going to pick up on the nature isn't neat. I've been a councillor, it's my second session now, and I have the sort of diverse views on grass cutting. But what I would say is that some people adopt almost like a Mrs. Bouquet outlook on grass. They raise their grass every 2 or 3 days, and they expect the authority to do that. And I do think sort of pushing on, if you like, the education is important. And in reality, in terms of sort of being eco-friendly, using diesel generated tractors to cut verges, unless it's a safety issue, in my opinion, is not a good thing. So I certainly would encourage that nature isn't neat, and the fact that we tell people about it. Thanks for the reports, really comprehensive and very informative. But two other things really, I would emphasise the push on regenerative farming. We've got something like 97% of Monmouthshire is down to farming, and in reality we've moved from the 50s and 60s mixed farming with livestock, crops, etc., and now we're in a very much a monoculture in terms of farmers either going flat out on dairying or livestock production, and particularly in Monmouthshire and Powys, you've got these huge poultry units that generate enormous amounts of manure. And certainly where I live, there's a farm up the road with something like 250,000 broiler chickens, and 40-ton trailers keep coming past my house to go onto farmland, and that obviously must leach into waterways. And I know that's probably more of an NRW issue, but I do think we need to sort of pull in farmers more in terms of regenerative farming and making provision for growing of trees and hedgerows, etc., so that there is more of a balance. And the final point I'd make, and it's not something that we can easily change, but if you look at some of the urban authorities in South East Wales, you look at Caerphilly, they've got something like 8 or 9 large country parks. In Monmouthshire, yes, we've got some park areas, but considering it's such a rural authority, if you don't own the land or you haven't got access to it, then I think it does cut out people who are probably on a lower income trajectory who would benefit from more sort of free access parkland. So something that would be obviously incredibly difficult to bring about, but I think it's worth noting. Thanks. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Anybody? Yes, Colette.
So thanks very much for that. It's in terms of the regenerative farming, it is something that we are working very closely with colleagues in our sustainable food area as well. So there's been quite a lot of integration on that front. We have got a number of farming clusters which have been set up as part of an original pilot that we've been working with, and our biodiversity colleagues have been closely engaged in that process. So the educational factors and the engagement with regenerative farming practices is something that we are keen to progress and develop. We've been closely linking with colleagues in the Wye Valley National Landscape with the Fermio Bro development, and the colleagues in the sort of areas through the farming through protected landscapes as well there through the FIPL, which is farming in protected landscapes, which is both in the Wye Valley and the Banau Brycheiniog. So we have that connection, we have that farming cluster development, we have those opportunities and the connections that are happening. We've also been extending those more recently in our partnership work in the living levels as well. So we have a farming regenerative opportunity working with the officers with the living levels, and collectively we're trying to come together to develop those cluster and communicative approaches to encourage farmers to a more sustainable regenerative approach. So it is happening, the work is out there, and we're collaborating to deliver that. But again, it is a big county, Monmouthshire, and there's only so many officers that we've got. But with the resources that we have, I think we've been making quite positive progress, to be honest, and that has been feeding in with the Section 6 report. So there's been quite a lot of overlap and conversation happening there. And you've got all those initiatives with Fermio Bro and farming and protected landscapes and the living levels that are happening as well. So a lot of that work is also just to sort of reassure as well is also feeding through in some of the work that we're doing with the Yes Catchment Partnership as well. So lots of stuff happening and lots of overlap and lots of conversations. And we'll see obviously how things progress with the sustainable farming scheme as well, which obviously will have a bigger impact than anything else. Just picking up on the country parks, one of the things that we do work hard to try to achieve in all of our planning applications is as much green infrastructure, green space that we possibly can achieve on any of our sites. And that's something that's an important part of the green infrastructure approach, as I've mentioned previously, as part of the development management approach that we take. So whilst it's not easy to dedicate and allocate large areas, new areas for country parks, we try to achieve that through innovative approaches such as our development management applications approach. So I don't know if there's anything anybody else wants to add to that.
Okay, thank you. So Judah, Thomas?
Thanks.
You're happy? Lovely. Okay.
Thanks.
Councillor Crook, if you just let Councillor Grocott first, please, because he was in front of you. Okay, Councillor Grocott.
Thank you, Chair. I think, as you appreciate, my laptop has frozen this afternoon, so I don't have a hand function to wave at you. So thanks for allowing me to come in. One vivid memory I've got from my childhood was a family holiday in Devon, and driving along a road in Devon, and in the bottom of the valley below where we were driving, seeing an otter hunt. And to think that was going on in my lifetime, I find quite staggering. And the delight that I felt when the first otter was spotted in Abergavenny, where I now live. I have worries that our local rivers, the Wye perhaps has come to prominence because of the way the salmon population has been decimated and so on. That while on the one hand we've got the return of these lovely animals, that there might not be enough food in the rivers to actually sustain a viable population looking forward. And I think, as you know, I spent most of my life in education, that we could do much more to actually bring youngsters into understanding the science of this and the balance of nature. And within my own ward in Abergavenny is a lovely example for grassland management. And I think the first time I came across Kate was talking about the old cemetery in Hereford Road in Abergavenny, which is mature and presumably Victorian or earlier grassland. And I think that with the new Welsh curriculum, for example, that could be an ideal area to get young people involved in environmental, biological studies of plant communities and animal communities. I know it's quite rich in butterflies. And the first year I came across this and realised that this was a fantastic thing in my own ward and that I ought to treasure it. I did a flower study, and I think I identified about 30 different species of flowers growing in this little spot in the middle of an estate in Abergavenny. I would hope that we might be able to inspire schools to do scientific work for the youngsters as part of their new Welsh curriculum in areas like that. It's great that we are looking at grassland management, and areas like that would be fantastic because there are, for example, war graves in there a lot of the graves actually tell you a bit about what jobs the people buried there used to do when they were alive. It's absolutely magnificent, and I just wish we could make more of it. And just a final quick point: nature isn't neat. This very week, I've been wrestling with a member of my population in the ward who is moaning like hell about, you know, the scrubby, tatty weeds growing over the road from him, and why don't you come and cut them all down like you used to? So I think it is a fantastic initiative, but it's a hearts and minds job as well, isn't it? And while we've got people who just see it as a load of weeds growing up, we've got a long way to go. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Colette or Kate?
Thank you, Councillor Groker. That site on Old Hereford Road has been used for a training session with children from the secondary school. So yeah, it's a really good resource. We used it for pollinator training and through the Gwent Green Grid. And another scheme that we've just started with Monmouth Comprehensive School is around Swift boxes. And they've been making some Swift boxes that we hope are going to be put up around the school somewhere. So we are trying to kind of getting at that age group as well. We've got across the authority a group of practitioners from lots of different service areas that do things with schools and children, so including food, active travel, ourselves in biodiversity, the Gwent Green Grid, obviously, quite a range of people. We're trying to draw together a common way of working with schools and a more efficient way of working with schools. Our limiting factor is always having enough people to actually go everywhere that the school wants us to. But we certainly take every opportunity through every grant funded project to ensure that we can get as much in as we can. And before my colleague Colette Mooney started on the Biotapestry project, she was delivering pollinator sessions in schools across Gwent, and she's done a couple of hundred of those sessions across the authorities. So yeah, it's definitely still happening, but we could definitely still do more.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grocott, you okay with all that?
Yeah, if I could just come back to say to Kate, I've recently renewed my CRB enhanced certificate because I'm chair of a governing body. So I've actually got that safeguarding certificate. So if you ever come across somebody, they're looking for an extra pair of hands, then I would be very willing to come and get involved.
A willing volunteer. Be careful what you wish for. Absolutely. Okay, just to quickly note, Councillor Brown wants to come back in, but we'll get everybody else through first, okay? All right, Councillor John Cook, come on. Didn't know you were a gardening man.
Thank you, Chair. I think sometimes we forget what our people are doing. If I can say Mill Common project is a tremendous, I'm quite proud of what we're doing. It's been really, really hard going for the weather conditions, but I just want to congratulate our people. It's been a total involvement of all of us. We've been able to plant trees. We've been able to talk to people on different areas. We've been able to get the history of trees. It's been tremendous, and I think that's a real asset for us. It's engaged the whole area. So I just want to say well done, and it's gonna. Some people can't see the bigger picture. I personally can, and it's going to be absolutely tremendous. So I just want to say well done, and people need to know what we're doing, really.
Thank you very much. Anybody wish to? No. Yes, Colette.
Just to say thank you very much. Actually, thank you very much. We very much appreciate it. I think the team. You know, we hear lots of sort of concerns and issues, but it's always really lovely to hear that, you know, the work's been appreciated. So thank you again.
Okay. All right. Then we have Councillor Emma Bryn. Hi, Emma.
Hi. Yeah, sorry to go back, really to kind of go back on what others have already said, really, about the concerns about some of the nature isn't aspect of nature is neat. My concerns that many of the current engagement activities tend to attract those that already understand and support the agenda. How do we plan to reach people who are disengaged, disaffected, and unaware of the scale of the challenge that we have? And what specific plans do you have to broaden our community engagement? How do we measure whether our communication and outreach efforts are actually increasing understanding and participation across a wider cross-section of residents? What indicators and feedback mechanisms will we use to assess whether our approach is genuinely shifting attitudes and behaviours around biodiversity? I think as councillors, we're quite often on the cold face and we're not always best suited to kind of trying to explain things adequately enough. And so how do we better take people with us on this? And could we have training ourselves on how to kind of answer some of the concerns our residents have? And the only other thing I had is regarding the tree warden scheme. I'm really interested to hear more about the pilot project and how it's progressing. Thank you. Diolch.
Okay, Kate, Colette, who? They're fighting again.
Sorry, just to sort of pick up again on the sort of, I think Kate sort of set out quite a number of sort of mechanisms that we are looking towards for the Nature is Neat approach, Councillor Bryn. So we are working on a campaign that'll go forward now. So there is a structure that we've got in place for training for operatives, which I think is the first process really to make sure that the people who are out there and that are actually working with the land and people as well and residents know and understand why and what they're doing. So that's an important part. And then the next part, obviously, as you've asked for and we will be delivering, is that training for members, because we do recognise that you're at the front face as well, and that you need to understand and appreciate what it is that we are trying to achieve, but also to be able to relay that to your residents as well, who obviously have concerns and issues, but many of which obviously are supportive as well. So mixed reviews there, I understand, but often you have people, the main people that do sort of approach you are those who have concerns themselves. You tend probably less to hear from those who are happy with the situation until problems do arise, and then we do have that flood of support. And then following that, obviously, in terms of that sort of public campaign, as Kate has mentioned, we will be looking to try to engage with the public through a variety of mechanisms, and we will be making sure that that process is measurable, and we have got those monitoring and evaluation assessment processes as part of our engagement structure. So it is something that we recognise, because it's beneficial for us at the end of the day. We need to know what and why and how many people are engaged with this. So trying to engage with the Monmouthshire platform, I think is an important one, making sure that we've got surveys out there and thinking about how we go about that. I think that's something still that we're probably developing exactly the detail of the process of that, and we'll be doing that in conjunction and collaboration with our grounds colleagues. That's we're happy to have feedback in terms of what you think is a good approach as well. So the offer is out there. We're keen to hear what you feel would be good as a way forward as well.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have an answer. How do you proactively engage with people that aren't that are not? I know it's somebody that's stood on stands but groups like Transition Monmouth. You do see the same faces, and I don't know the answer as how you actively go out and reach to people that are disengaged and disenfranchised. So it'd be interesting to know what your thoughts are on that.
Okay. Yes, sorry. Okay. Kate would like to speak.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's a challenge, and we can try, even pitching up on a site where there is long grass and speaking to people that are walking past is often, a good way of engaging with people about their green spaces, because they're actually using their spaces. Yes, we can try, and as I say, it isn't designed yet, our campaign, and we'll have the member seminar ahead of that, so we can really feed into that then subsequently. If I can come on to the tree warden scheme, is that okay, Councillor Brynny? Yeah. So we have, through the Woodland Investment Grant that we had for Mill Common, we started a process of a pilot at Mill Common for a tree warden scheme. And there was an initial training session, but I think we're hoping to do some more. The tree warden scheme is like a national standard of volunteer. So the aim is to train volunteers. It's the grounds, Sue Parkinson and Mark Cleaver are sort of the driving, they would be their volunteers, if you see what I mean. But we hope that we'll be able to spread it across the rest of the county as well. So yeah, it's a if you Google what the tree warden scheme is, you can see the sort of the skills that the training provides and what is expected of volunteers, because it's a national standard.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful scheme, and I'd love to see it rolled out across Monmouthshire. So I'm hoping to see it move on from there. Thanks.
Okay, before I let Councillor Brown, Louise and Lisa come back in, I just had a couple of questions, if I may. You mentioned at the beginning, it's very interesting to hear, new jobs, and I was just intrigued. Obviously, there's a cost involved with that, but what will it save and how will it save? And you also, and I'm aware of when we have, for example, ash dieback work done, we have to, or any work done actually, we have ecologists often employed, and is that person therefore going to jump into that and therefore save us a lot of money on ecologist costs that we have to employ subcontract? That was my one thought. And the other one was new machinery down at Nedden. I'm quite sure the residents down there and the councillors down there would love to know all about that in the future and perhaps see it demonstrated and make sure that they're aware and involved for when that happens. You also, nature isn't neat, obviously, is a keen issue here. One of which I'm very versed on and totally with. But one of the things I'm also aware of is that people like to walk through areas. And perhaps I'm homing in my own personal thoughts from my own home, but could we not have walkways through and not straight paths either? I can hear my husband going, what are you talking about? Not straight, wandering paths and wide enough for two people to walk through happily, and therefore also stage the length of the grass a little so that they are not embroiled too much in it, and they can experience what we're all talking about at first hand rather than at the edges of it, and perhaps some information boards as they're doing these things. Yeah, that was my thoughts. So there you go. If they're my questions, thank you very much. Oh, please. Sorry, I forgot to ask you for me.
I'll start off, and Kate, you can probably jump in as well. So in terms of the jobs, yes, it is positive that we've got a new post which will be coming forward, and that will be a saving because at the moment, probably as you've suggested and is the case, we do spend an awful lot of money engaging consultants to carry out those roles and pieces of work that really we could be doing in-house for a lot cheaper. So the savings really have been considered in that respect, and that's something that we've considered across the board, working with our highways colleagues, and they feel that that's something that they can accommodate and make a significant saving to be able to address that resource that we're having pressures on both for highways and for waste as well. So we hope that that'll be a positive, really, that'll give us extra resource and help us deal with continuous and ongoing issues really that need to be addressed across the authority. If I want to just picking up really, I guess that touches a bit on the ash dieback as well. I know that unfortunately, our funding for, or rather not our funding, because we don't have any funding for Ash Dieback. Anything that we do have, we have to secure through either Section 106 or grant funding. But grounds do have had a budget, which I believe that may not be continuing going forward. So we do have to be careful on how we address ash dieback in terms of ecological issues. And again, we haven't had anybody in-house to be able to help us address that particularly. It's had to fall on the shoulders of our existing ecologists, who are, as I've mentioned, particularly stretched and having to deal with a lot of other issues across the authority, in particular for planning. So hopefully with that additional resource, we'll find that we will have an officer who will be able to pick up on some of those issues that we know come up as a regular problem when we're dealing with ash dieback. In terms of nature is neat, just the comment that was made just in terms of having additional walkway areas. Absolutely, I would say that that's something we've definitely sort of taken into account in terms of the design and the schemes of those areas. Having those wider walkways, pathways for people to move through areas in an organic and winding way, if you like, through some of our grassland areas is part of the design and the scheme of what we try to achieve. And our grounds teams have been definitely encouraged to adopt that approach rather than just trimming edges and things like that, really. So that obviously is more appropriate in sections where we've got very big grassed sections, so that we can accommodate it. Where you're finding that obviously we've got some of the edges which are being trimmed, as you say, or neatly cut back. It's really for the purposes of trying to define sections which are perhaps a little bit smaller and less able to be used in that way. So I don't know if there's anything. So I'm an Ed, and I don't know if you pick up on that, Kate.
Yeah, just lastly on the walking through cut grass areas and information boards particularly. So most of the larger areas that have nature isn't neat management do have some kind of interpretation board. You'll see the one with the fox on it, the purple one with the fox on it. That's usually positioned somewhere on those sites, although they do sometimes get vandalized. But they provide a lot of information, not just about pollinators, but other wildlife that uses them as well. And then, yes, so the Nedden Brook strategy, we've had that for a number of years now, the strategy, but we were working with NRW to try and resolve what it is that we could actually do. Because we, proposed to kind of remove vegetation, remove trees, but they told us that they wouldn't be able to give us a flood risk activity permit to do those works because they didn't see the benefit and that we could actually make things worse. So we've resolved now to cutting the vegetation and removing it. That's fine as long as we don't dig it up. That's when the problem arises. So we've got a piece of machinery for that, and we'll work with Caldecott Country Park, the castle, with Tristan to promote that to the wider community.
That's great, thank you. When you said you were a piece of machinery, you've got me interested now. What is it? You knew you didn't.
I think it's just some kind of flail that you can also pick up the arisings with. I believe I entrusted Gareth Llewellyn to order the correct piece of machinery, so I'm sure it's right.
Could be fun, that one, couldn't it? Okay, thank you very much, and most interesting to hear. When I asked about the paths going through, will they be mowed regularly enough so that people can continue to walk through? I know it sounds silly, but that is like the basic sort of, yes. Okay, thank you very much for that. That's great. And it's very interesting to hear about the ecologists and hopefully saving money elsewhere. Right, so go back now to Louise. Sorry, I thought Lisa. Okay, Councillor Dimmock, sorry. You're on mute, Councillor Dimmock.
No, Louise's were number 2. I'm more than happy for Louise to go first.
Yeah, I just got told that from Robert that Louise is coming second, as in she's on the second bite of the cherry.
I'll be very brief, but I thought I couldn't let the meeting carry on without commenting on Nature Isn't Neat and weeds, which I do support. Nature isn't neat. But the lack of care and attention to weeds coming out of the roads and the pavements. Last summer, I spent several days, back-breaking days, out pulling the weeds, because obviously that eventually causes more damage and requires more road maintenance and footpath maintenance. So I do think we need to look at how we're dealing with that. And I don't envy you. There's a balance somewhere. And if it means that I'm a Mrs. Bouquet, Councillor Thomas, I'll take that as a compliment, because she was a national treasure. I'm not fussing on appearances, but neglected weeds do become a real problem. So you can address me as Hyacinth from now on, Councillor Thomas. So thank you, Chair.
That's okay, Hyacinth. That's not a problem at all. Okay. Anybody want to answer any of those thoughts, please?
Just
I'm not necessarily looking for a response. It's just I really want officers to consider it, because it's been a huge complaint from residents this last year.
We absolutely we hear that, Councillor Dimmock, and that's something that it hasn't come from just yourselves. We have spoken to others as well, and it's the reason that we're looking to deliver this campaign now going forward. That'll be, a sort of multi-pronged attack, working with operatives and members, county councillors, community councillors, members of the public, and all really to try to sort of, address the concerns that have been raised, as well as the compliments that we receive and the enthusiasm along the way. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Brown, your turn.
Yes, thank you. Is it possible to put up the first slide that you had on your presentation? Because that's where a number of the questions have arisen. Yeah, because obviously you talk about climate change and flooding and so forth, and you've mentioned about regenerative farming, but one of the news reports I saw in other areas is that basically they're asking farmers to dig up trenches and make ponds, so the flooding in the rivers further downstream is protected. And I just wondered if there was any work ongoing in that sort of area, because it seemed as if it does actually help, to prevent some of the flooding issues that, we're getting in certain areas. The other point that I wanted to make was on the flooding thing. In my area, for example, Matham Village regularly gets flooded in two particular areas. One is under the bridge, which cuts off the village halfway because of the drains issue and the street sweeping. But also there is a road that regularly gets flooded, which is next to the Mountain Brook Lodge, which is a small road. And in that road, where it does get flooded, there is the sewage pumping station, and Welsh Water, the last meeting I had with them, wanted to look at whether anything could be done with the local authority with regard to the road and also with regard to the field there. And I think they were going to try and find out who owned that field, because it regularly gets flooded as well from the brook overflowing. The brook itself, Mountain Brook, one of the concerns we've got is about sewage seepage, because basically in a field more or less opposite Mountain Brook Lodge, there is a main sewer pipe that basically there's manhole covers and there's bales of straw around it, and that regularly gets flooded. So you get sewage going into the brook, because you have mentioned Nedenbrook, and I am concerned about the NRW response to these issues, because I have been told that they work on the basis of the Hampton principles, which is basically targeted and proportional. So in other words, they'll only deal with the big cases and they won't monitor pollution in smaller brooks and so forth. I mean, my answer to that was effectively, well, if you'd monitored it at a lower level, the River Wye wouldn't be in the state it's in terms of the phosphates. So I am concerned about the NRW response, and also obviously in Malvern Village, a particular farmer keeps bringing in tons and tons of soil from what were alleged to be the Lydney housing sites, and NRW doesn't seem to be, even though planning notify them, they're not interested in doing anything about it. And yet materials that are basically taken into an area are supposed to be licensed, and that they don't seem to be interested in doing any enforcement on that. So those are particular areas I'm concerned about. And I think one of the points that was made before, because obviously the River Wye has come up, is about phosphates and poultry farming, but also I did also notice that with the RLDP, there's some query about phosphates, and this is going to be delayed until about the 23rd of February. And I just wondered whether, as we've got Craig here at the moment, whether he could comment on when the Planning Inspectorate is likely to look again at the RLDP. So I thought I'd take that opportunity while he's here, because I don't think we've read that on documents about the phosphate delay from the Welsh Government response, but we haven't had any feedback from the local authority on it for people who are interested in the RLDP. Thank you.
They're fighting again, guys. Honestly. Kate's going first. She won.
Yeah, I'm going to answer the easy part, I think, on natural flood management. So in terms of landowners holding back water on their land, the flooding team have recently applied to Welsh Government for a number of natural flood management projects. Some of those are working with individual landowners to deliver those kinds of interventions. And I think there's one proposed north of Dingestow, which looks very interesting. But on a larger scale, they're looking at the mono catchment with the Wye and Usk Foundation, looking at working with farmers in that catchment to identify how much water they can store on their land to improve flow levels, and then working to develop markets around people downstream, businesses downstream, contributing to payment for ecosystem services, essentially. So giving those farmers some money to hold that water back on their land. So those are kind of two major areas that the authority are working in at the moment on natural flood management. Okay.
Helpful if it, obviously, I mean, and that's it. Great news, but obviously it'd be lovely to be across the whole of Monmouthshire. Thank you.
Craig, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Brown, for the question. Yes, it is very relevant at the moment. So, as you know, Monmouthshire County Council submitted their replacement local development plan to PEDU for examination. PEDU have written back to us and asked for some additional information with regards to the phosphate load of the development proposals. So we are collating that at the moment, and will be then submitted to PEDU then ultimately to have a review of that and to look at the considerations and the impact on water quality within our rivers. As you know, we've got phosphate stripping capability in Monmouth and in Llanfoist, so we have got that strategic phosphate solutions for those two treatment systems. And it is now just explaining that narrative and explaining what we are dealing with in terms of the phosphates to PEDU to give them the evidence to take that plan forward. There may be times, members, through this examination process that the inspector might suspend and ask for additional information like this. So this is not unusual. It's just about building that evidence base before we go into the hearing sessions to assess the plan. As you know, Natural Resources Wales, Welsh Water, Welsh Government all commented on the plan, didn't have any objections with regards to the impact on the river, and we will be having those conversations ongoing with them in terms of what is needed. It might be that we need to find some additional mitigation for those sites in regards to phosphates, and we will certainly be seeking that from the developers if that is the case. But we're working through that at the moment as we progress. But there are no objections in relation to water quality at this stage.
So do we know if the timetable is changed? That's all I was asking, really.
In terms of the timetable, well, it takes 11 months usually for examination, so I can't give you a clear indication in terms of how long that's going to take.
I was thinking you did send an email previously about your sort of timetable in terms of starting dates so that people know when the hearings are going to be. And obviously, you know, this additional inquiry means that it is probably going to be a bit later. So I think it would be useful if people knew what stage, you know, when the expected hearing stage actually would start. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I mean, we're all in the same boat. Ultimately, we're waiting for Planning Environment Decision Wales to let us know when the hearings are going to commence. As soon as we know, we'll pass that information on to members and members of the public as well, and we'll be told at the same time in terms of when things are happening. Officers are in exactly the same place as members in terms of Planning Environment Decision Wales manage this, and they'll let us know when the hearings are going to take place.
Can I just jump in and ask a question in reference to that, please? Sorry. So in reference to the phosphate stripping, in particular in Monmouth, there's a document that's come out that's saying there have been occasions, and I'm trying to remember the actual figures, but there was quite an in-depth document about it, and that wasn't necessarily favourable in all senses. There was some elements that weren't. Have you seen all of that, and what's your thoughts, please?
Yes, so the latest, thank you, Chair, for the question. The latest data in relation to the lower Y in Monmouthshire is that it isn't actually failing. So the data is that the health of the river and the water quality in the river Y is improving. So it is actually a betterment. It's good news, ultimately, in terms of our position in Monmouthshire. In the upper Y, there is still some failing areas, and we're working with the Y Nutrient Management Board in terms of collectively with Powys, with Herefordshire, in terms of how we can seek improvement. And Monmouthshire is an active part of that. But it is good news in terms of the lower Y, and we are seeing better results and better water quality. So that is positive ultimately in terms of the water quality and health of our rivers.
That's great. I was referring to the phosphate stripping. There was something about that wasn't as positive as it thought it was. That was what I remember reading in the last week or two.
Well, Chair, I'm happy to look at an article or any additional information that you've got that is against that. I mean, in terms of what we have achieved, we didn't have phosphate stripping in Monmouth. We have now. That is going to reduce it significantly. And if there's any other matters, I'm more than happy to look at anything else.
I'll dig it out and send it. Thank you. Okay. Right. Are we all done? Any other questions? Come on now. Don't let me down, team. We're all done. Okay. I think we're all done. So without, thank you very, very much to the three of you for attending. I just wanted to run through my thoughts on what everybody had said. So from Councillor Strong, we had 7-side forum, and that he will add it to the agenda for it. And of course, Ned and River and Nature Isn't Neat. Councillor Tudor Thomas, education, Nature Isn't Neat, regenerative farming and parkland. Councillor Emma Bryn, Nature Isn't Neat, engagement, training for members and tree warden scheme. For Councillor Brown, it's planning, following through on localised flooding, Nature Isn't Neat, I can't even say it now, Nature Isn't Neat management, and natural flooding, and of course the RLDP and the effects of recently. Councillor Lisa Dimmick, we've got Nature Isn't Neat. It's a bit of a rhyme going here, isn't there? Damage to roads and pavements, and actually that's a real big cause of a lot of our money and our potholes. I don't want to bring that into the same subject, but I'm afraid. And Councillor John Cook, Millbrook, tree planting and what a good scheme it all is. And Councillor Martin Grocott, education, grassland management. And education, I think, was Councillor Grocott's real push on that, was education, education, education. It's a bit like buying a house, location, 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 isn't it?
Man with me made that comment some time ago.
Did they now? Right, okay. So, and of course I asked about the cost of the new role for an environmental, I've forgotten the exact words, new job for an environmentalist for the highways, and what it will save us within MCC against all the subletting and subcontracts that we have to employ somebody to do it. The machine for the Nedden, and of course nature is neat, and pathways through to allow people to have nice little walks through. Thank you very much. Lisa Dimmock's got her hand back up. What would you like to say?
Sorry, I've lost my voice a minute. Just to note also my comments with regards to planning and how the team are feeding into planning with regards to some open cases on soil imports in particular, and water runoff, water quality.
You are right, and that was at the top, and I put a line through it, and I do apologise because I thought it was.
Thank you.
But I was mistaken. You are dead right. Okay. Oh, Hyacinth. Okay. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Brown wants.
Yeah, I think I made quite a few other points, but presumably that will be picked up in the minutes. Thank you.
It will. It will be added on the documentation now. Hang on a moment. Okay, Hazel's just informed me we will obviously do the minutes, but there'll be a lot of feedback ready for the officers. So there will be a transcript going through. They're just what I grabbed out. That's just me. Okay. Okay, anybody else? All happy? On that note, I would like to say thank you very much for all attending. And next meeting is on the 19th of March. And I look forward to seeing you all there. And thank you very much to the officers for attending and giving us all that information. Have a safe journey home. Bye-bye.